Ashley Kitchens, welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast for round 2.
Thanks, Stacy. I am so excited to be here.
We are talking about, we're going to try to stay on one specific subject today, and the subject is keto. And the reason why I asked Ashley to come back to talk about this is because she's been talking about it on her Instagram handle, and I messaged her and she told me that she despises it. And I think it's time that we help people understand what's happening to their body if they do decide to try this quote diet. So, Ash, like off the top of your head, like what do you want to say as we begin this conversation about the keto diet?
Ooh, I have so much to say, Stacey. I think first and foremost is it's really important to advocate for yourself, because especially when there's a bunch of fad diets circulating, it's like, oh, maybe I should try this. Or like my friends, cousins, uncle lost X amount of weight doing this diet. Should I do it? So advocate yourself and do your research, because a lot of these, fad diets that people are trying can be potentially dangerous. And when we look at the keto diet, even decades ago, when it wasn't labeled the keto diet yet, people were dying from drinking these high fat protein or low, like moderate protein shakes, and there wasn't any doctor supervision. And so there can be some dangers associated with these fad diets, as we all know. So definitely do your research is a big thing.
Yeah. So let's dive into what exactly is keto. And I think that I do want to kind of get a little bit into, plant-based keto, animal keto, but like keto in general, people are thinking what? They're thinking high protein, high fat. What are you seeing with your clients when they're coming to you and saying, oh my God, I tried the keto diet, it didn't work, or oh my God, I tried it, it worked, and now my gut is destroyed? Like, tell me what you're hearing.
So a lot of my clients come from a dieting history, and they have, of course, tried the keto diet because it was very, very popular just even a few years ago, and it still is today. And a lot of them say, I was incredibly tired. I was constipated out of my mind. Like my gut was, everything moving was just at a halt. A lot of them say that they had headaches or they were losing their hair, just things that they were like, this doesn't seem right. Like clearly my body is trying to tell me something or rejecting whatever it is that I'm doing. And so, as you know, because of all these symptoms, and two, a lot of them were hungry or they just didn't like feel good with what they were eating, because oftentimes they were eating a lot of especially if they're not plant-based, a lot of meat, a lot of butter, a lot of these high fat foods that maybe they weren't used to eating, even with the standard American diet. And so it was a big shift for them, and they really struggled. And so it didn't last long. It maybe lasted a few days. I know some have tried it for maybe a month or two, but even then they're like, Ashley, it was not sustainable. Like, I know that this is not the way that I'm meant to eat.
So, okay, what does let's just say animal-based keto diet, what does it look like? Are people restricting grains? Are they restricting fruit? Just basically restricting carbohydrate? What is it? What is the generalized definition you would say is a keto diet?
So a keto diet, it's incredibly high in fat. It's moderate in protein, and it's very, very low in carbohydrates. Stacey, this is how low it is. So the goal is to really keep your carbs below 40 grams per day, usually around 20 to 50 grams per day. So to give you an idea of that, it's about, like a regular banana is about 30 grams of carbohydrates. So there's you hit your mark basically right there. Or even a cup of spaghetti or a cup of pasta is about 43 grams. And a cup of pasta is not very much if you sit down and have a bowl of pasta. So that's a very, very small amount of carbohydrates. And so if you think about really a lot of these foods that are whole foods that are rich in fiber are pretty much not part of the keto diet. So anything with fiber, it's going to be very, very low, or it's going to be a processed food where a lot of fiber is added so that the quote, net carbs are low and you can eat it on a keto diet.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what that feels like energy wise. Because carbohydrates are our easiest source of fuel, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, our brain loves carbohydrates. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So people are restricting not only carbohydrates, but along with that comes fiber.
Mm-hmm.
So what are people eating? I want to know like what your clients say, okay, well, I was eating this on the keto diet. Like, what does it look like in a typical day of a keto eater, especially an animal-based keto diet?
So it includes a lot of these foods that we see in the media as maybe not being the greatest foods for our health. So things like red meat. So someone might wake up and have a plate of eggs and bacon and a lot of high fat animal based foods. And then for lunch, they might have some deli meat with some cheese and maybe like a little bit of fruit on the side. Again, it has to be very, very limited, especially when you're following the actual keto standards. And then for dinner, same thing. It's going to be something that is incredibly high in fat, like maybe a burger or a piece of chicken or steak, and probably like some butter or something on the side. I know butter coffee is a really big, it's called bullet coffee, but that's a big part of the keto diet as well, where you're putting like a stick of butter in your coffee. So different things like
Yeah.
this.
I still don't understand why people are putting oil in their coffee. I mean, I understand. And I also don't understand why people are like praising. I try not to like make this podcast too polarizing, but I don't understand why people are putting like oil, like MCT oil and eggs on this pedestal, just because there might be nutrients that could be potentially beneficial for your health doesn't mean that it's not packaged in a way that there's other things that are detrimental to your health, right? And it's very frustrating. Oh, gosh, the mass media is so annoying. So let's talk about diabetes and keto, because you just mentioned, and I feel like the insulin dependence or insulin like non-sensitivity issue and hormone issues are on the rise. And we know that hormone issues are directly related to insulin issues, not being able to produce enough or not being able to let the insulin get into the cell. And we also know, thank you to the plant-based world and mastering diabetes specifically, that high saturated fat foods, which saturated fat comes from comes from animals, mostly, unless you're downing lots of coconut oil, that is blocking the ability for sugar to get into our cell, and insulin can't do its job. So are you seeing people that are having insulin issues, blood sugar issues after being on keto?
So personally, I have not seen that. Thank goodness. I'm like praying hands right now. I haven't seen it, but the research has definitely shown that a diet high in saturated fat, a diet high in fat can contribute to the development of type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance like you're talking about, because what we once thought was contributing to type 2 diabetes was sugar, eating a lot of sugar, even fruits. That's decades old. That's a very archaic recommendation where people say, well, now you need to limit your carbohydrates, your fruit, your pasta, all these things when you have type 2 diabetes. But what we know now is that fat is a major contributor to type 2 diabetes, because that fat, like you're talking about, gets in the cells. And I think Dr. Greger uses this as an example. It basically acts like a gum, in your cells, so that insulin isn't able to get into your cells like it usually is without having like a high fat diet. So that fat is basically clogging everything up, slowing everything down. So this development of type 2 diabetes is increased because of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is really good that you're not seeing people with blood sugar issues, because I really do feel like that is, I mean, we know that so many people are having, again, like I said, hormone issues, and that's very, very directly linked to blood sugar issues. And the amount of saturated fat that we're consuming on a normal basis is detrimental to this whole system and this process. And a lot of us are having blood sugar spikes in the daytime, and they don't know why. We're pounding the eggs and the bacon in the morning, and then we're combining that with like white bread, and it's just not good. And we're not having success on whatever diet we do because people are so focused on protein. Okay, so gut issues. Are you seeing people with gut issues that have come to you with keto?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Whether they've tried keto or even not. Yes, definitely.
Okay. And so what are you suggesting for people to start to change? And I also want to just kind of piggyback this question with, if you're going to say starting to eat more plants is going to help their gut, that's good, which you're probably going to say. But two, when they do that, Ash, how do you suggest that people are reducing their gas?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because gas is obviously can be a major side effect of eating more plants, especially if you're coming from a high fat or high protein type diet. So yes, so gut issues, they are so rampant. And one thing that I do recommend is focusing on eating more plant-based foods, because that your gut bacteria loves plants. It loves fiber. It loves feeding off of these whole plant-based foods. And I also recommend, as best as possible, even taking some fermented foods every day. So even if it's just like a tablespoon of kimchi or a little bit of tempeh, like that can also help. So that's a big one. And then the more they eat these plant-based foods, obviously, like you said, there can be some gas associated with that. And so we talk about hydration, because hydration is a big part of digestion. So making sure that they're good there. And then we talk about little things like things that you can do to you make sure that you're not getting too gassy after eating beans, like rinsing them really, really well, or if you can, make them from dried, and then different things there that they can do to kind of minimize that. And then if it's really bad, if it's really persistent, then I might suggest like a probiotic or a digestive enzyme, or even doing like a stool test just to see what the heck is going on inside their gut.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So speaking of digestive enzymes, what are your favorite brands? And happy to drop any
Oh,
links that if you're like an ambassador or an affiliate or anything like that. Like, do you have like specific types of enzymes that you would go to first?
the ones that I typically research first, or as long as they're plant-based or vegan, like that's what I look for. And if you want to order them off of Amazon, you definitely can. I'm not an affiliate with any specific digestive enzymes, but I've recommended a few for my clients that are just really easy to access online. I can't remember any specific brands off the top of my head, but there are some really good ones out there if you just search, vegan or plant-based digestive enzyme, and then do a little bit of research just to kind of see what they're made of and what the reviews are to make sure it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, making sure they're like third party tested and safe and clean. Okay, that's
Yes.
helpful. Okay, so let's talk. I mean, we've talked about potential. What else? Hold on. Let's before I ask this question, what else aside from potentially blood sugar issues and gut issues would an animal-based keto diet or carnivore diet? I mean, really the only difference there is that they're adding a little bit of greens and, in the keto versus, or like non-starchy vegetables versus the
Yes.
carnivore diet. But what other potential health issues could we see from this type of eating pattern?
So I had a client just last week. She sent me a history of her cholesterol labs, and it was over the course of like maybe seven years or so. And she had an arrow pointing to when her cholesterol spiked from, it was around like the 170s, and it spiked to well over 200, might have been 240. But she basically went from eating the standard American diet to a keto diet, and her cholesterol just shot way up. And so then her doctor, thank goodness, Stacy, suggested, why don't you try eating a bit more plants, adding those into your diet. And her cholesterol, you could see, started going down. And then now she's plant-based and her cholesterol is like beautiful. But
Mm.
that is a big risk as well. If your cholesterol going up, and then we know that that can contribute to heart disease or other issues down the line. And that's the thing with keto is, it was first developed as a ketogenic diet, a therapeutic diet to help kids with epilepsy. And then it was basically just perverted into this fad diet that we know now, where anyone tries it, not in a therapeutic way. And then we see some of these ramifications like high cholesterol or at risk for developing type 2 diabetes or constipation, even severe constipation where people aren't going for weeks at a time and they need help to do so. And then also nutrient deficiencies. That's another one, because the keto diet, as you can imagine, because you're eliminating a lot of whole plant-based foods, you're not getting a ton of micronutrients in,
Mm.
and in a variety of micronutrients. So people on the keto diet have to be careful of their vitamin C intake, their magnesium intake, and even just their fiber intake, their electrolyte intake.
Mm, okay. Can we go back to cholesterol? Because I saw a nutritionist talking about the benefits of eating eggs. And
Mm.
she was talking about how it's so good for raising your good cholesterol. Can we talk about that?
There's so much to talk about. Eggs are so controversial because the thing with eggs is there's for one study saying that they are great for you. There's another study saying that they are not great for you. And one thing we know is that eggs are packed with cholesterol. And do we need to eat cholesterol? Do we need to consume cholesterol in our diet? For most people, like, no, we do not, unless there's like some sort of medical issue going on where they can't make cholesterol, whatever it is. But we do not need to eat cholesterol. I mean, our bodies naturally make the cholesterol that we need without us having to get it from our diet. And that includes eggs.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that a statement like that saying, raising your good cholesterol, I think that's a little bit misleading. And it's maybe talking to the 1% of people out there, like you said, that aren't producing the amount of cholesterol that they need. So just be wary of that. Okay. Now, Ashley, animal keto versus plant-based keto. Do you think that there's benefits in a plant-based keto pattern of eating?
Benefits, I would say there are very little, because one thing that we know about trying, even if it's a plant-based keto diet, is that with fad diets, typically the reason people are trying them is to maybe lose weight or, drop certain sizes or whatever it is, or to prepare for some event coming up. And again, that's for most people. I know that's not for everybody, but with these fad diets, even a plant-based keto diet, one thing that we know is when people go on them for the purpose of losing weight, 95+% of those people are going to gain that weight back and some and more and more. And so a plant-based keto diet really is not sustainable. And I say that in part, Stacey, because I tried it for one day. I did a plant-based keto meal prep. This was many, many years ago. So I just want to see what it's like. Everybody's talking about it. And it was horrific. I was consuming cans of coconut milk during the day, like in shakes and different things like that. I had to portion out 6 raspberries for myself. That's all I could eat that day because my carbs would have gone over. And I think I struggle with it because the way that we eat should feel good to us. It should feel sustainable. It shouldn't feel like a lot of work. And I feel like whether it's an animal-based keto diet or a plant-based keto diet, it's a lot of work, and your body does not prefer to live that way. It really doesn't. Like we talked about earlier, our bodies love carbohydrates. Our brain loves glucose. And so when we're fighting against that, when we're trying to use other sources to fuel our body doesn't like it.
Yeah. So for your clients, patients that are trying to transition, what are some of your top tips? Are you having them go right into a high carbohydrate way of eating? Are you just like slowly helping them incorporate? Do they need to watch the FODMAPs, like because maybe their gut is damaged? Like, what are you seeing, and how are you suggesting that they switch, especially for those listeners out there that want to try to get off of this pattern of eating if they feel stuck?
Yeah. I would recommend, and something that I do, is to start really, really slow. The thing with the keto diet, when you transition from even the standard American diet or plant-based diet directly into keto, most people, and for those that have tried it, have that like keto-like flu that comes with it, where your body's, quote, detoxing from basically using carbohydrates as its main source of fuel to now using fat. And so what we don't want to happen is when you're going back to a plant-based diet or back to the standard American diet is to just not feel good. And so we do it very, very slowly in a way that feels sustainable. So whether we're starting with one meal or we're starting with just to add in like more fruits and vegetables to snacks or the meals, whatever way feels best for the client and for someone listening.
Do you think that incorporating like fruits first or beans first or grains first makes any difference? Have you seen any of that, or? or
It
what?
definitely can. So what I typically recommend is doing like cooked vegetables, because oftentimes raw vegetables can really like just tear people up. So they're a bit more easy to digest. The beans will add in very, very slowly because, like we talked about earlier, like just the likelihood of bloating and gas because your body's not used to them, it can be really, really uncomfortable. And then also incorporating like easy to digest fruits. So things like bananas or maybe just different fruits that you find personally are just like easy on your digestive system are a great place to start as well.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts on keto that you want to talk about? Because I said that we were going to stay laser focused on this topic, and any takeaways, top tips that you want to give people, anything.
I think right now, like there is not a whole lot of long-term research done on like the fad diet, the keto diets. The ketogenic diet, we have tons of research on just because it's been around really since like 400 or 500 BC, where they used like fasting to help with epilepsy. But one thing with the keto diet is we don't know the long-term risks of being on keto. I mean, we know that there are things like kidney stones, liver disease, deficiencies, and a lot of vitamins and minerals that come with it. But we don't know exactly how it's going to impact us long term. So I think it can be so quote like sexy in the beginning because people are losing weight and people are talking about it, and it went viral on social media many years ago where a lot of these big podcasters and quote biohackers were talking about it. So with any diet, whether it's the keto diet or a different diet, just use your intuition in a way, because a lot of these diets are sensationalized and are really sexy in the beginning, but we just don't know the effects that they'll have on your body. Um, so with that being said, I mean, whether you're on the keto diet now or whether you're thinking about trying it, again, just think twice before you try it, and also advocate for yourself if you are on it and it is a struggle. There is help to get you off of it if that's what you're wanting to do. And I mean, the plant-based diet is a great way to go, but really any diet where it feels aligned and you don't feel like you're fighting against your body or even fighting against like the foods that you're trying to eat. If they're not making you feel good, then why are you eating them?
That is so good, Ash. Thank you. And I hope that this just brings awareness, and that I just want to leave one final like note, because this is something that I'm for some reason super passionate about. Cardiovascular disease is our number one killer. Okay. It is the number one reason why people go to their grave earlier than they need to. The number one reason, even higher than COVID. Okay. The second reason is because of high blood pressure. And that's a whole other topic. But we must reduce the amount of saturated fat that we're eating, because we don't need to be doing this. And that has a direct link to giving you cardiovascular disease. And we're finding that in animal products. Okay. So cheese, meat, eggs, dairy, they're all loaded with saturated fat. They contribute to higher cholesterol. They damage your blood vessels and potentially just setting you right up for blood sugar issues and early cardiovascular disease symptoms. So I mean, I know the majority of people that are listening to this are younger. You might think that you're invincible, but just like Ashley said, there is no long-term research on this because it is so, quote, new in terms of dietarily and not just for the treatment of epilepsy. So just stick with what we do know, which is eating whole plant foods. That is directly linked to living a long and amazing life. And if you need help, just reach out to Ashley. She can help you. She's the queen of plant nutrition. So Ashley, you are so awesome. Thank you again for coming back. And that's all I have for you today. Do you any final thoughts? I already asked you that, but anything else?
No, I mean, you were spot on. Like a considerable body of research shows that diets high in saturated fat can increase the risk of heart disease and other chronic diseases. So you're spot on with that. And yeah, I am just as obsessed with plants as you are, Stacey. So I appreciate you having me on to talk about this.
We've got to spread the message. And I am so thankful for the work that you do. So thanks again, Ash. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.